Hi there, I'm Nafisa Latic. Welcome to the first episode of Across the Balkans in 2023, as we analyze what the region could expect in the new year. With the Ukraine conflict triggering an energy crisis, will countries be able to find other sources instead of relying only on Russia? 2022 ended with some positive developments regarding the EU's enlargement in the Western Balkans. After Bosnia and Herzegovina received candidate status in December, Kosovo also applied to join the EU. Will it too be soon granted a status? Meanwhile, political crises have shaken many countries, such as Bosnia, Montenegro and Bulgaria. Will stability be secured in the year ahead? And will long-standing ethnic tensions ever be solved? Veljko Skenderija tried to find out some of those answers in his report from Zagreb.
Croatia has enjoyed a successful year. It has connected its territory via the Pelješac Bridge and achieved what was required to enter Schengen and the Eurozone on January 1st. And while Zagreb faces no significant political challenges in 2023, analysts say it needs to keep an eye on the economy.
Zbog ulaska u eurozonu i zbog poštivanja nekih pravila da dostignemo te ciljeve, da deficit bude ispod 3% i da javni dug tendira da pada sa 80 prema 60%, time se ona ograničila najsnažniji instrument za zaustavljanje recesije, a to je proračunski deficit.
Jurčić believes that because of this, Croatia will very likely fall into a recession with minimal GDP growth, if any, as its most important export market, Europe also faces a decline in economic activity. Nevertheless, its entry into the Schengen zone, geostrategic rearrangements of global relations and location should open some new perspectives.
Republika Hrvatska može postati prostor preko kojeg će se energetski opskrbljivati zapravo kompletna Srednja Europa, ali ne samo energetski, nego može postati i transportni prostor za robe koje dolaze u Srednju Europu i to je sada naša prednost.
And Croatia is already working on it. It's about to boost the capacity of the LNG terminal on the island of Krk from 2.9 to 6.1 billion cubic meters. That's double the annual need of Croatia's households and industry combined. The plan is to become an energy hub for Central Europe. Croatia enters 2023 with a 6% jump in GDP. The country is already fully integrated into Euro-Atlantic associations, giving it the confidence to overcome the challenges its neighbors are struggling to address. For example, neighboring Serbia is still stuck between East and West, and the situation on the border with Kosovo is increasingly tense. Roadblocks and protests are on the verge of escalating into an armed conflict. Anger is boiling over in both Kosovo's north and in Belgrade as well, and neither side is willing to reconcile.
Ne prihvatamo nikakve sporazume. Kosovo je sastavni deo Srbije, tako je i tako će ostati.
Belgrade still doesn't recognize Kosovo, which it considers part of Serbia, even though Pristina has already applied to join the EU. And there isn't much room for optimism in 2023 and even beyond.
Nove generacije koje dolaze, iako nisu doživjele sukobe oružane, ali nemaju nikakve kontakte sa onima drugima i nemaju iskustvo suživota, a odgajani su samo narativima koji naglašavaju sukobe između Srbije i Kosova, tako da prevladava dosta pesimističan stav oko rješavanja tog pitanja.
And while Kosovo's EU prospects are in doubt, as it is still not recognized as a state by 5 members, Serbia isn't any closer to entering the EU either. That is, unless it recognizes not only Kosovo, but also imposes sanctions on Russia. At this stage, neither option seems realistic. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić is hence expected to continue walking a tightrope between Brussels, Russia and China. 2023 doesn't bode well for Montenegro either, and it has much to do with Serbia and even Russia. Montenegrins are polarized between so-called Serbophiles and sovereignists. The country is embroiled in a political and constitutional crisis and engulfed by protests.
Zbog antifašističke, građanske Crne Gore, multietničke, civilizovane Crne Gore. Zbog njene mladosti, zbog novih naraštaja i da poručim Evropi, Evropo, ima nas, a ima li tebe?
Just 2 years ago, Montenegro was closer to entering the EU than any other Balkan country. But under current Prime Minister Dritan Abazović, it has all but turned back on its European and Euro-Atlantic goal.
To je izrazito opasno, pogotovo kad znate da Crna Gora ima jadransku fasadu, da nije landlocked country i da može odigrati u nekakvim strateškim okolnostima vrlo neugodnu ulogu za rusko prisustvo na ovim prostorima.
And while Abazović tries to cut the powers of President Milo Đukanović and push Montenegro into the arms of Serbia, the people may have other ideas, depending on whether they identify themselves as Serbs or Montenegrins. And the likely population census in 2023 may settle the matter.
To sad u Crnoj Gori više nije tehničko pitanje. To je ozbiljno, ja bih rekao, i temeljno političko pitanje gdje se naprosto ide na prebrojavanje tko je tko i utvrđivanje tko ima jaču snagu.
And while 70% of citizens still say they are in favor of the EU, it seems that one other Balkan country, North Macedonia, is showing a greater desire.
Meni se ne čini da je nemoguće da u vrlo kratkom roku Sjeverna Makedonija postane liderom procesa pristupanja.
To satisfy EU members, especially Greece and Bulgaria, the country has already changed its name twice and its constitution several times. And in mid-December, a historic day happened for Bosnia and Herzegovina. EU leaders said yes to granting the country candidate status, ending a nearly 2-decade wait. Will there be a political and economic shake-up in Bosnia and Herzegovina going into 2023? It will all depend on how its leadership responds. And Veljko Skenderija believes that this could be the long-awaited turnaround for Bosnia, especially if the government is formed by a civil coalition.
Bilo bi stvarno pogubno, dugoročno pogubno za građane Bosne i Hercegovine da propuste ovu priliku. Dakle, priliku kada Evropska unija otvara nove i drugačije perspektive.
Perspectives such as one where Bosnia is no longer viewed as a protectorate that is managed from the outside, but through negotiations with the EU gains complete authority over its own affairs. But this may require a lot of goodwill and even greater compromise between the representatives of Bosnia's all three entities. Veljko Skenderija, TRT World.
Let's cross to Brussels now, where Toby Vogel is joining us. He is a political analyst specializing in EU and the Balkans and the co-founder of Democratization Policy Council. Toby, Happy New Year. Great to have you with us as our first guest.
Happy New Year to you too.
Thank you. What do you see as the biggest challenges for the region in the 2023?
I think the region will continue to experience a very challenging geopolitical context with the ongoing war in Ukraine. But more concretely, I think that the headline issue, especially in the first half of the year, is probably going to be some kind of approach to a final settlement between Serbia and Kosovo. That has been, the sides have committed to that, and that will be very tough, of course, especially in light of the, of the occasional violence that is engineered by Belgrade in the north of Kosovo. So that will keep diplomats very, very busy. It might also have sort of real-time impact on the ground.
You know, Toby, we discussed this matter of Kosovo, Serbia so many times with several EU diplomats throughout the year. What they say usually is we can't do anything until the situation on the ground is calm. But who will prevent the situation escalating further?
It's not just that the situation escalates, it is that President Vučić, who controls the north of Kosovo, who controls everything that happens there directly out of his office, engineers this violence for instrumental reasons. Every time there's violence, the Europeans feel that they need to go firefighting, and that distracts from the broader question. And the broader question is recognition of Kosovo by Serbia. That's what this is all about. At the end of the day, you can possibly find some kind of diplomatic formula that obfuscates that recognition, that de facto recognition. Personally, I think that would be a bad idea because it would open the room for Belgrade to walk back from such an agreement. But whatever form that agreement takes, it will be a problem for Vučić domestically, and so he uses the violence both to extract concessions from the EU, as well as to keep his home audience on their toes.
If Russia's attack on Ukraine continues in the next year and we continue to see the events that we are seeing at the moment, how will this impact the situation in the north of Kosovo and Vučić's next moves, as he has been neutral until now when it comes to Russia, one of his main allies, and Serbia's EU path?
Well, you know, if you have an organization that you're seeking to join, telling you you need to join our sanctions against Russia, then not doing so is not neutral. He is balancing between the two sides, obviously. And so far, he's been successful in this. The pressure on Belgrade has eased somewhat. There was a lot of pressure a few months ago, but Vučić used the violence in the north again to accumulate political capital, diplomatic capital, because by distracting from the issue of sanctions. Plus, the EU has its own internal problems with Hungary, which only reluctantly backs sanctions, which makes a problem every time that there's a new sanctions package. So they feel in a weaker position to demand this from Belgrade. So right now things are fine for President Vučić, but I think there will come a point when that balancing act will run out of road, where it's no longer possible to maintain that.
What we have seen in the wake of the conflict in Ukraine also is a little bit more active EU in the region. Bosnia has been granted a candidate status in December. That was another country that was a hot spot because of its security concerns. How do you see EU's moves in the next year towards Bosnia and Kosovo particularly?
Well, Bosnia has received candidate status a few weeks ago in December. And Kosovo actually applied for EU membership, which of course stands no chance for as long as 5 EU member states don't recognize its independence. I welcome in principle the EU's renewed engagement, especially in Bosnia, which for 15 years has been stagnating or backsliding under EU leadership. But my concern is that there doesn't seem to be a willingness on the part of the European Commission in particular to reassess its policy and to its approach and to ask itself why it hasn't delivered results. Just doing more of the same is not going to help. The very same elites, the very same political parties that have blocked reforms every step of the way are now again in governments at various levels in Bosnia. So unless the EU gets serious about this, nothing will change.
And just briefly at the end, the Balkans was, for 1,000 years, a space of various interests. We have seen that in the last year, particularly. In the wake of geopolitical changes, will the region feel a stronger impact of these foreign influences in the next year?
That would certainly be my guess. We've seen external actors move in quite aggressively, for example, into the information space. And I don't just mean Russia, I also mean China, I mean Turkey, to some extent, some of the Gulf states. And of course, the EU itself and America, the US, are external players as well. So yes, I would expect an intensification of this sort of symbolic power struggle, this struggle for symbolic power, if you will, for the hearts and minds of the citizens of the Western Balkans.
Toby Vogel, great to have you with us, and thank you for your insight for us, as always.